Hey guys! So a few of you have been asking questions, and you've been asking questions for like a fairly long time now since we actually started vlogging, and about us, about how we met, about our experience and everything like that. And we actually thought, let's get down to it. Let's actually finally answer some questions.
We've been putting it off for a long time. We're well overdue. Mostly because we just didn't really want to make a 15-minute monologue of us talking about ourselves. So we're going to try and mix it up. We're going to try and make it interesting. So stick with it, and some of your questions will hopefully be answered.
Yeah.
So,
question 1. Okay. I'm Kiara, and I am from England originally, but have lived in Australia for the last 9-10 years.
I'm Adam, as you know, and I am from Perth in Western Australia, and I spent most of the better part of my adult life in Melbourne, which is where I met Kiara.
Alright, question 2. Adam's actually good at telling a story.
Kiara and I were the product of a share house relationship. Dun, dun, dun.
Thankfully, it went well, because that could have been disastrous.
God, yes. I still think she was the keen one, but I was the last to move in, and so it's on me. So I was...
He had to move in to date people. That's how bad his situation was.
That's how keen I was. So Kiara had been there for about 6 to 12 months prior. 6 to 12 months?
Yep.
Yeah. I had moved in just recently, and long story short, Kiara drinks a lot of tea, as you all know, and I started drinking a lot more tea. Every time I heard the kettle come on downstairs, I would come down for, I'll have a cuppa while the kettle's on. And we got to chatting, and then the tea became drinks, and then the drinks became hanging out more and more often, and eventually we were just inseparable. Yep. And we have been ever since. In the time we've been together, we've had many adventures. We've been to Japan, spent a lot of time in Tokyo, spent a lot of time snowboarding in Japan. We went and did the Amazon rainforest together. We went to Chile. We went and did Machu Picchu. Lots of adventures, lots of fun. We'll throw some happy snaps in for you. It'll be great. Sundays. That's how we prepared for our sailing, which brings us to another question. So there's never been a time when we weren't working towards an adventure or on an adventure, and it's been quite the adventure.
Yes, indeed.
And Kiara's the kind of person where if you have an idle discussion on the way home from work and just say, what if we did this? And then you sort of start thinking about it, she'll have a spreadsheet, she'll have the numbers, and she'll have everything but the flights booked to the next day, which ironically is how we decided to come on this adventure. I was reading a book at the time, and somebody made a reference to hundreds of couples leaving to sail around the world every year from Europe. And I was like, I wonder if we could do that. How would we do this? And we just got to chatting on the way home from work. And we, one day, another day, and another day, and it became a topic of much conversation. And before you know it, we had spreadsheets, we had saving plans, and we had a separate account, and the money was going in, and the flights were booked.
Sailing.
We had a deadline, and then it was done. And when the flights come up, and they cost you $2,000 each, you get on the plane. So when the time came, we sold up everything we had, we got rid of our apartment, and we were gone. And that was that.
Question 3 was I used to be an administrator for a finance firm just before I left to go sailing, which is how I ended up doing so many spreadsheets, and so much of all the planning was because I was sitting at my desk every day going, ooh, what about this? And when we escape, I can do this. Prior to that, I was a recruitment consultant. Prior to that, I was a bartender. Prior to that, I was a model.
Just for the record, Kiara did not want me to put this in, but I convinced her to let me keep it. So before we left on this adventure, I was an aerospace engineer. I worked on military helicopters, contracted to the Australian Defence Force. Before that, I was a serviceman driver for a company that leases out plant machinery. Before that, I was in the Army Reserves, in the 10th Light Horse back in Perth. Shout out to 10th Light Horse on you boys. And before that, I was a whole bunch of other things. Just too many things to announce or care about or warrant mention.
Fourth and final question.
Many people have asked whether we had any sailing experience prior to departing on this crazy adventure. Some people do, some people don't, so it's an understandable question, and perhaps we haven't represented ourselves as well as maybe we should have, which is why some of you may think that we have not sailed at all prior to this little expedition. We did do some preparation. There's never enough preparation for something like this, and sailing, I believe, is just a lifelong pursuit. I'd been sailing since I was about 15 with my dad. I was the young foredeck in a crew of salty old dogs out of South Perth Yacht Club. I did that since I was 15 through to my early 20s when I moved to Melbourne, when I met Kiara. So that was a pretty good and pretty steep learning curve to start with, and then I went on quite a long hiatus to do university and things in Melbourne, and didn't really rejoin the sailing scene until we started preparing for this undertaking.
I, however, had never sailed before prior to meeting Adam, and when he persuaded me to go on this crazy adventure, we immediately kind of set about getting some experience. So we put a little note up on a bulletin board in a sailing club, in Royal Melbourne Yacht Sailing Club. We were quickly snapped up by a racing crew on a Swarbrick 97. And I'm going to have to asterisk that one in because I've probably got it incorrect. But we did that for about a year. I was on the winches and sail trimming, and Adam was on foredeck again, and that gave us some pretty good practice and definitely got me into the mindset of what it would be like to sail a boat.
Then, as a final test of objectives, we decided we would take a 2-week charter of a 38-foot Beneteau through the Whitsundays. Half of it was with a crew of 4, as in myself, Kiara, Kiara's sister and her partner at the time, and the second half was just the 2 of us, which was a pretty good test because the weather was quite rubbish throughout the whole charter.
It was like a week after a cyclone had just hit Whitsundays.
The place was trashed. So that was a really good test of objectives, and it gave us a little insight into what it might be like to be short-handed with quite a large boat. and we did well. We worked together quite well
Yeah.
as a team. We were happy that we would be able to survive, and the rest will come.
We knew
in
we
due
could
course.
then buy a boat.
That's right. And it was also a fantastic opportunity for a proposal, and she said
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And then we went and spent all of the wedding money on the boat. Money
And
well spent, if you
thereby
ask me.
answering another question, we are not married, we are just engaged. So that's a little bit about us, and I know that we haven't covered too much, but
If we've missed anything, or there's any questions that you're just dying to have answered, perhaps we can do a second part with a little more detail. Nobody likes talking about themselves for too long though, so we'll keep them brief. But yeah, if we've missed anything and there's something you're dying to know, leave us a comment. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so and give us a thumbs up. And thanks for watching. See you next time.